Hello, my name is Daniel Guiney, and this is my second short video on ways of knowing, which I'm producing as part of my week 3 activities for the Nord Anglia University TOK course. Today I will be thinking about intuition. If I'm honest, this was a way of knowing I initially shied away from, but the longer I've spent thinking about it this week, the more fascinated I now am by it. Just a reminder, I am of course a history teacher, not a psychologist, not a scientist, but I do hope to dip into many different fields and disciplines to help me interrogate the topic a little bit. And as always, I'm piecing this video together, my second one, in the hope that it might stimulate a little bit of discussion out there on this platform across the Nord Anglia family of schools. So for ease of reference, I'll break the talk down to the same 3 parts as the last one. Firstly, why I chose this particular way of knowing, which is intuition. And secondly, by exploring intuition as a way of knowledge. And thirdly, by briefly considering some possible future implications. So, section 1, why intuition appealed to me. Well, put simply, it didn't. I felt much more comfortable in the last video talking about language, because I felt that was something I'd given plenty of thought to. I was really interested on a personal level in my daughter's language. I thought I had a secure knowledge and understanding of it. I think if you ask people who work with me or know me, that they might describe me as quite a rational person. And at any rate, I like to perceive myself as quite deductive, quite logical. It's what we do as history teachers. We put the facts together and come up with opinions. So to discuss something like intuition, to me at first seemed rather wishy-washy, quite difficult to nail down. I wasn't keen on exploring it as a way of knowing. But then I did a little bit of reading this week, and I discovered there are many great minds, from Steve Jobs to Robin Williams to Albert Einstein to Professor Robert Winston to Nikola Tesla, who all espoused intuition as crucial in human knowledge. And that started me thinking, do I need to question my own way of knowing here? Okay, if Albert Einstein says it's important, maybe I should reconsider my stance. Could it be that I am wrong? Well, as it turns out, probably not for the first time. I will argue here that I was, and that intuition is really crucial. So, we make 35,000 decisions every day as human beings. Thank you, Google. Reasoned and deductive logic can be used for many of these, and that is important. Decisions we make affect who we love, where we work, how we feel, what we eat, so it is important to consider them. Think of all the bad decisions we may have made in our lives. What if there was something deeper within us that transcends us as individual beings, that helps us definitely make the right decision, and fast? Wouldn't that be great? If we're all somehow connected and we have this innate ability to make the right decision. Sounds far-fetched, but that's what I will argue here. Socrates, ancient Greek philosopher, from the cradle of civilization, called the voice inside his head the daemon. So I'm going to move on to section 2, which is to discuss intuition as a way of knowledge. And I hope this is the bit that might stimulate some discussion in the box below. So I always ask my students to define key terms in their essay introductions. So I'll try and do the same here, because I think there's some confusion about what intuition actually is, at least there was to me. To me now, it means an innate understanding of an event, which does not draw on pre-existing knowledge. Rather, it's something innate. So what is intuition not? What is it not? Well, it's not making a decision using knowledge. There's a really interesting video that I disagree with personally on YouTube with Dr. Yankee Santoka, who argues that intuition is nothing more than digested knowledge. So, there's a picture here of 2 people. One of them's a murderer. I think it's that one because, and you make a quick 1-second decision. Well, he's not smiling, so he's probably angry. He must be the murderer. Okay, so digested knowledge. But I'm going to argue that's not the case, that it's something more innate. So if I'm watching Sachin Tendulkar make a perfect cover drive in a test match, I don't think he has an innate ability to do that. Rather, I think it's years of training, muscle memory, hours in the nets that have caused him to perfect his shots and make a correct decision about what shot to play and what part of the pitch to play it to within a split second. Same too goes for the footballer Naeem, who scored an incredible goal against David Seaman for Real Zaragoza in the 1995 European Cup final. I think that strike, that moment of amazing decision making, came because of hours of training, the right diet, wind direction, temperature, and many other variables. I don't know if any of you out there watch the TV show, US chat show Jimmy Kimmel, one of my favourites. He has a segment on his show where he tries to guess if someone is a foreigner or an American. He calls it foreigner or not. And often he gets it right, sometimes he gets it wrong. But he looks at things like the types of shoes they're wearing, what weight they are, and other lifestyle conditions that give him clues about the correct choice. So again, therefore, I don't think he's being intuitive. I think he's making a reasoned decision based on digested knowledge. Moreover, though, intuition is not simply guesswork. I recommend you watch the life coach Jo Simpson on YouTube. She gives a talk in Malta to see how she places intuition into a working model, something that we can improve on. We've all got and we can develop. If I said to you to pick one of these lottery tickets and told you that one of them won last week's jumbo payouts, I don't think you could really use your intuition to help you pick the right one. No, that would just be a lucky guess. Likewise, football fans out there, I don't believe Paul the Octopus was acting on intuition when he successfully predicted all the Germany national team results in the 2020 South Africa Football World Cup. You know the one with the catchy Shakira Waka Waka song. This octopus, basically they had two containers with food in. One had a flag of one country, one had another flag of another country. And he successfully predicted that Germany would beat England. My team, they did, 4-1. Then his tentacles predicted they would beat Argentina, and they did. And then Paul the Octopus went against his own home nation and said that Germany would lose to Spain, which they did. So he got all three correct. But I don't think you can call that intuition. That's just luck. The octopus simply looked at the food in the flag emblazoned boxes in his tank. He had no sense of what the flag represented, or the fact that these symbols, colourful symbols, were linked to socially constructed nation states, let alone the idea that they were able to link to 11 men running around after a ball. Okay, no, Paul the Octopus had no idea and therefore no intuition in that example. It was just a bit of fun. All right, the same for me when I was a child and my parents asked me to pick a winner in a horse race, popular in the UK, known as the Grand National. I let my cat walk across the page and chose the one that she ended up on. Okay, I didn't ever win, but I had great fun betting my annual £1 both ways. So intuition then is not luck. I'm not a scientist, but I believe there are two parts of the brain, the conscious and the subconscious. And for me, people who tap into their intuition to make effective decisions in knowledge act on this subconscious part of the brain. So I'll quote somebody here who I think you should all know more about, which is Nikola Tesla. Very, very undertaught in schools. We talk about Einstein, even people like Edison a lot. We don't talk about Tesla very much. And he said, instinct is something which transcends the knowledge we have. Undoubtedly, certain inner fibres that enable us to perceive truths when logical deduction or any other willful effort of the brain is futile. If you'd rather, Einstein said of intuition, it is the only really valuable thing. So maybe if Einstein and Tesla think it's worth considering, you and I should think about this gift we have a little bit more. If you get a chance, if you're interested in this topic, I stumbled across a TED Talk by a really fascinating man, called Magnus Walker, who moved to Los Angeles from Sheffield in England in the 1970s. He looks like this, and then he goes on to tell you about his successful clothes line company, his movie production business, his private Porsche collection, and he's very much the kind of man, when you hear his story, who acted on intuition, just knowing that something was right at the time, and that helped him make the correct decision. Interesting guy. Have a look for him. So I'll argue here then it's an innate sense of decision making which links us all. Basically, it's when you say, well, it felt right. So why did you give him the job and not the other person? Both got the same qualifications, both got equal experience. Well, it just felt right. Okay, we made a decision intuitively. My favourite actor of modern times was Philip Seymour Hoffman. Absolutely wonderful on the screen. I thought one of his greatest performances was with Meryl Streep in a movie called Doubt. You might have seen it. If not, again, really worth watching. Hoffman played a priest who was accused by Meryl Streep of molesting a child under his care. And it's really interesting the way the story tosses and turns throughout. Streep's character's basically got no evidence at all to go on. She just knows. Okay, she just feels that he's a sexual predator. And there's an excellent scene when she slams her window shut to symbolise how in control she needs to be. And the beauty of the movie is you never really discover at the end if he was guilty. He leaves, he goes away. Spoiler alert, sorry. But you never really understand if her intuition was correct or if she was just, a meddlesome nun who wanted to destroy somebody's life. Fascinating movie. So where have we seen intuition? Where, if we want to harness it and help use it in our acquisition of knowledge, where have we seen it? Well, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook founder, famously made the decision to drop out of Harvard to focus on a little idea that he had that other people thought wasn't important, which was social media. Likewise, there was a point when the actor Tom Cruise must have decided not to be a Catholic priest, but instead to seek a career in acting. The musician Sting once made the decision to leave his teaching job to pursue a career in music. Harrison Ford, one of my heroes, would have been a carpenter rather than Indiana Jones. So I think we would all agree that these people that I've just mentioned made the right decisions because they're very successful. And at some point, did they act on their intuition? That's my question. The late psychologist Naini Ambadi did some experiments where people looked at pictures of teachers like you and I, and they rated them in their first impressions. Who was a good teacher, who was not a good teacher. And it's really fascinating that their ratings correlated strongly with student end-of-term ratings. And that, to me, demonstrates that there is an intuitive nature of social processing. So again, I'm a history teacher. I tend to fall back on history as an area of knowing, rather than maybe the sciences and other things. But here are some questions that I thought I might want to explore were I to teach this in a TOK lesson. Firstly, a tsunami hit Thailand a couple of years ago at 10 a.m. There were dogs barking across Phuket from 7 a.m. Likewise, we often hear that birds fly away before natural disasters hit. Why is that? Do they have some sense of intuition, or is there a physical or chemical stimuli that causes them to do this? Secondly, the coronavirus pandemic across the world has stopped lots of sport being taking place. Should Liverpool Football Club in England be awarded the year's title for the Premiership? After all, the data suggests they will win it. When Calpurnia told her husband Julius Caesar to stay at home before he went to the Roman Senate in 44 BC, where he was famously killed on the Ides of March and stabbed many times, was that female intuition? Did she just know that he shouldn't go because she was telling him not to and he ignored her? Robert Emmett, a man I think in his 80s now, bought huge amounts of shares in Apple in 1996 before it then exploded on the stock exchange. And Emmett said he went with a gut feeling. The company is now worth over $1 trillion. Same with Ray Kroc, who took over McDonald's small fast food restaurant in San Bernardino, which obviously is now worldwide. You might have seen Sam Kroc portrayed by the excellent Michael Keaton in the recent movie Founder. Again, was that an intuitive decision? Housekeeper Anne Waugh famously refused to board the RMS Titanic in April 1912. It then sank to the depths of the Atlantic. and she just said she had a feeling, a bad feeling about it. Again, was that intuition? Likewise, Carl Jung had a premonition about the First World War. Another one I found on Google, really interesting. John Lasseter was a co-founder of what's now Disney's Pixar, and it was a game changer. One of his voice actors, the incredible Billy Crystal, another hero of mine, said of him, "These people think differently." So Lasseter, the co-founder, could have given up and done something more mundane. Instead, he spent 30 years working on Toy Story. Was there ever an intuitive decision where he said, "I know this is what I must do"? So for me, the answer to all this, it's effectively the difference between what's deductive reasoning and what's intuitive. How do we know? Is it just guesswork or a premonition, someone with a crystal ball, or is it something that actually is innate to us? For me, the answer is in the history of the human race. That's what my research has led me to think. A baby will cry at up to 90 decibels, but no one's ever told it to do that. It's just a natural instinct and the one weapon the baby has to get attention. Not only will crying cause mum and dad to rush to her side, but it will even cause a physical increase in milk production in the mother's breast. So if we're physically adapted with physical instincts to survive, therefore surely it's not too far a leap to assume we might have a mental ability or a mental instinct too to help us survive. And for me, that's called intuition. We spit out poison. We've got 5,000 taste buds, again, thank you Google, which change every 9 or 10 days. And were I to eat giant hogweed, my body would instinctively tell me that it tastes horrible, spit it out. So if our bodies react to danger and choices, why would our brains not? Again, another hero of mine, I'm throwing lots of them in here, Professor Robert Winston, such a likeable man. It presents an excellent documentary on YouTube in which he describes survival as, quote, the most basic instinct of all. He argues we are pre-programmed with certain characteristics, and when a baby is born, for example, for me this is really crucial, it will immediately latch onto the mother's teat in order to drink milk. Now, no one's ever told the baby to do that. No one gave it an IKEA-style instruction manual. No one said, baby, go to this location and find your milk. It doesn't go to the fridge and open the door. No, a baby just knows. So it's had 9 months of feeding from the placenta, never seen a nipple before in its life, and then suddenly the baby just knows, instinctively. So for me, that's what intuition is, an innate knowledge that we all have and which we can nourish in order to make correct decisions. Others perceive it as being more spiritual than evolutionary, and they link it to a higher power. There's a Buddhist monk on YouTube called Radhanatha Swami who speaks of, quote, decisions that are based on a higher platform. It's the idea that we're somehow linked in with the cosmos. So I found that really interesting, and I hope it promotes stimulates some discussion amongst you about intuition as a way of knowing. I'm now going to move on to section 3, which are further possible future considerations. Well, we live in an age of big data. Algorithms are everywhere and are becoming more and more advanced in the decision-making process. This is in part thanks to the growth of computers from the 1980s. But the key in making good decisions, I feel, is being smart, not big. Professor Norman Fenton at Queen Mary University, London, talks of probability, and he looks at things like how you can predict football results and how algorithms are used in casino gambling, often to good effect, and it can work. Poker matches, there's lots of probability and maths involved. But on the other hand, Nostradamus predicted a range of things without being part of that age of big data, such as the French King Henry II's death in a jousting competition, so very specific stuff. Was that his intuition? But in terms of future consideration, I think Richard Branson, the British entrepreneur, makes a really good point where he said, I rely far more on gut instinct than using huge amounts of statistics. But then on a personal level, I think we in schools use Alice data and CAT data, where we say a certain child is in the upper quartile, or they're likely, they've on a flight path, they've got a level 5 in year 8, and therefore they should be a grade C at IGCSE, and therefore he might get a 5 or a 6 at IB. So it kind of goes against, I think, sometimes what we do as teachers in using big data to inform our own thoughts. But then again, I think in the age of coronavirus in which I'm creating this video, we've been asked to give teacher predictions because examinations have been cancelled across the world. I don't think my students would be very pleased if I went with my gut instinct and said, "Oh, I think you'll get a C," okay, rather than something evidence-based. So, to conclude, Steve Jobs, the founding CEO of Apple before Tim Cook, famously said creativity was simply connecting the dots, quote unquote. He dropped out of university after 3 months, and he went to attend a calligraphy class. There, he learnt the ideas for the beautiful typography which you use on the Apple Mac. And in his Stanford speech, he famously spoke of, quote, your gut, destiny, karma, whatever. And we could replace the word gut with intuition. He said you have to trust in something, and that he would swap all his technology for an afternoon with Socrates, possibly to discuss the daemon. Dr. Benjamin Spock talked a lot about a lot of things, and he couched his thoughts in these terms. He said, trust yourself. You know more than you think you do. And I love that quote in the context of human evolution. I think it's really powerful. So for millions of years, we as humans have been crying to get food and calories as babies. Only relatively recently has food become generally widely available to many of us, yet babies still cry for food and attention. And that's because we're all connected and our intuition is still there. So although our intuition is often correct, and there are people like Katrina Kier on her TED Talk who argue in favour of using it, it's also worth knowing there are some people out there like the wonderful Eckhart Tolle who argue that you should not always follow your intuition. So to conclude, I've argued here that I've changed my mind, that I now believe intuition is a really, really important aspect of decision making and how we acquire knowledge. And I would really welcome your thoughts on intuition as a way of knowledge. Okay, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to reading your comments. All the best. Bye-bye.